Pax vobiscum. Welcome back to the channel, and to another episode of The Vestal Virgin Reads. Today we are going to continue our reading of Character, the Grandest Thing in the World by Orison Swett Marden. Today we will read the final chapter, Chapter 9, Cultivating the Growth of Man-Timber. "Character is everything," said Charles Sumner when upon his dying bed. "First of all," said President Garfield when a boy, "I must make myself a man. If I do not succeed in that, I can succeed in nothing. According to the order of nature, men being equal, their common vocation is the profession of humanity," says Rousseau in his celebrated essay on education. "And whoever is well educated to discharge the duty of a man cannot be badly prepared to fill any of those offices that have a relation to him. It matters little to me whether my pupil be designed for the army, the pulpit, or the bar. Nature has destined us to the offices of human life, antecedent to our destination concerning society. To live is the profession I would teach him. When I have done with him, it is true he will be neither a soldier, a lawyer, nor a divine. Let him first be a man. Fortune may remove him from one rank to another as she pleases. He will always be found in his place. We are, therefore, to remember, as Dr. Moxon has told us, that the main business of life is not to do, but to become, and that action itself has its finest and most enduring fruit in character." John Stuart Mill has put this matter clearly. The character itself should be to the individual a paramount end, simply because the existence of this ideal nobleness of character, or of a near approach to it, in any abundance, would go further than all things else toward making human life happy, both in the comparatively humble sense of pleasure and freedom from pain, and in the higher meaning of rendering life not what it now is, almost universally puerile and insignificant, but such as every human being with highly developed faculties would desire to have. "And this," says Mill, "every man is to work at. Though our character is formed by circumstances, our own desires can do much to shape those circumstances. And what is really inspiriting and ennobling in the doctrine of free will is the conviction that we have real power over the formation of our own character, our will, by influencing some of our circumstances, being able to modify our future habits or capacities of willing. How is character made up except by our choices and our refusals? We select from life what we choose. We resemble insects which assume the color of the leaves and plants they feed upon, for sooner or later we become like the food of our minds, like the creatures that live in our hearts. Every act of our lives, every word, every association, is written with an iron pen upon the very texture of our being. There is dew in one flower and not in another, said Beecher, because one opens up its cup and takes it in, while the other closes itself and the drop runs off. What will our future be but what we make it? Our purpose will give it character. One's resolution is one's prophecy. There is no bright hope, no great outlook for the man who is not inspired by a stalwart purpose, which alone is the one true interpreter of his manhood. There is not in the lowest depths of our hearts, said Robertson of Brighton, a mere desire for happiness, but a craving as natural to us as the desire for food, the craving for nobler, higher life. To satisfy this craving is good business to be in. If a youth were to start out in the world with a fixed determination that he will make no statement but the exact truth, that every promise shall be redeemed to the letter, that every appointment shall be kept with the strictest faithfulness, and with sacred regard for other men's time, if he should hold his reputation as a priceless treasure, and feel that the eyes of the world are upon him, that he must not deviate a hair's breadth from the truth and right, if he should take such a stand at the outset, he would come to have the utmost unlimited confidence of mankind. What we are to be really, we are now potentially. As the future oak lies folded in the acorn, so in the present lies our future. Our success will be, can be, but a natural tree, developed from the seed of our own sowing. The fragrance of its blossoms and the richness of its fruitage will depend upon nourishment absorbed from our past and present. The first requisite of all education and discipline should be man-timber. Tough timber must come from well-grown, sturdy trees. Such wood can be turned into a mast, can be fashioned into a piano, or an exquisite carving, but it must become timber first. Time and patience develop the sapling into the tree. So, through discipline, education, experience, the sapling child is developed into hardy, mental, moral, physical timber. The only real success worthy of the name is that which comes from the consciousness of growing wider, deeper, higher, in mental and moral power as the years go on. To feel the faculties expanding and unfolding, this is the only life worth living. And is not all this inspiration in response to a divine touch and a divine life? When Mendelssohn once went to see the great Freiburg organ, the custodian, not knowing who he was, would not let him touch it. After much persuasion, he allowed the persistent youth to touch a few notes. The old man stood entranced. He had never heard such a melody before. At length he asked the great player his name, and when he had been told, he stood humiliated and self-condemned. A greater musician than Mendelssohn, unknown to us perhaps, has stood by the human organ which very possibly has given out only wolf notes before the world, pleading with us to let him touch the strings and bring out the music divine. And what a grace it is to come into touch with God. I have read of a girl whose wonderful grace and purity of character charmed every one who knew her. One day a friend touched the spring of a little gold locket which she always wore on her neck, but which she had let no one see, and in it were these words, "Whom not having seen, I love." Mrs. Livermore has said that Miss Willard was ever conscious of being encompassed round about by unseen presences and helpers. She lived in perfect spiritual reciprocity with the unseen world. How beautiful it all is, after the blunders and the high aspirations of youth, and the struggles of manhood, if life's discipline has brought us nearer and nearer to God in the ideal life. What are our yearnings, asks Beecher, but homesickness for heaven? Our sighings are sighings for God, just as children cry themselves asleep away from home, and sob in their slumber, not knowing that they sob for their parents. The soul's inarticulate moanings are the affections yearning for the infinite, and having no one to tell them what it is that ails them. Do you not remember the legend how the inhabitants of an ancient hamlet proposed to welcome their king, when it was announced that he would honor them with his presence? Early and late they toiled to beautify their village, to make their homes pleasing in his sight. At length, their utmost done, they rested on the eve of their sovereign's coming. But lo, in the night, while they slept, the angels came down and transformed all their work. The morning sunlight unfolded a scene of radiant splendor. On the sites of lowly cottages, stately mansions rose. Snow-white marble gleamed where simply wood had been. Golden pinnacles shone aloft in the bright sunlight. Fountains sent forth their wealth of spray. Palm trees in graceful loveliness stood around their village green. Though but a fable, the story is substantially true, since it is thus true that God, with the smile of approval, enriches, ennobles, and beautifies the labors of those who love him, and out of love serve him. When, at the evening of our little day, he comes to us or sends his messenger to bid us come home, not the great things we have done, but the faithfulness in doing the little duties he has placed upon our hands, will win his approval. Let him first be a man, Marden quotes of Rousseau. Fortune may remove him from one rank to another as she pleases. He will always be found in his place. All the world cries, "Where is the man who will save us? We want a man." Don't look so far for this man. You have him at hand. This man, it is you. It is I. It is each one of us, Alexander Dumas states. This chapter follows Marden's examination of what manhood truly is. And a quick note, I would like to say that while Marden speaks primarily of men here, his words also apply to us women too. That is, he is speaking as manhood as part of all of us, as mankind. And I think that Marden, who writes to us from 1899, sums it up so succinctly in this chapter through his own words and the words of others. To quote Rousseau from page 51, "Nature has destined us to the offices of human life, antecedent to our destination concerning society." What does this mean? Well, it means that we are born into, quote, "the profession of humanity," and that regardless of the many circumstances and vocations we will find ourselves in over our lives, one constant remains, our humanity, us, that we are men and women. As such, since everything else comes and goes but we remain, does it not make sense to work on ourselves, to cultivate our character, to put in effort to the discipline of our thoughts and actions, to become the very best versions of ourselves that we can be? Rousseau said, "To live is the profession I would teach him. To live. If we learn how to live, how to conduct ourselves, how to control ourselves, how to live and set that pillar of marble in the way that we want and we must, then we, in the words of John Stuart Mill, would go farther than all else toward making human life happy. Because in the end, as Dr. Moxon says, the main business of life is not to do, but to become." Marden has threaded that theme of becoming through every chapter, but here it is a powerful call to arms, a stern yet hopeful reminder, a hand pointing to a North Star. Marden in this chapter reminds us of our own power, our own ability, the strength that our own desire for change can have, the conviction gifted to us by the great Creator, the great Transformer. John Stuart Mill says, "Though our character is formed by circumstances, our own desires can do so much to shape those circumstances. Such is the gift of free will, which Mill goes on to say is the conviction that we have real power over the formation of our own character. As we discussed in the previous chapter, we receive bits and pieces of behaviors and influences from everything and everyone around us. It is unavoidable. But that does not mean that we are at the mercy of the world. How is character made up except by our choices and our refusals, Marden says. We select from life what we choose. Marden acknowledges life and its trials, how there will always be things we cannot control, such as sickness, catastrophe, other people's actions, accidents, meanness, nature. He acknowledges this, but also reminds us of the beauty of life, that no matter how it may feel that everything is slipping through your fingers, there is one thing you can control through all of the turmoil: yourself. There will be times you fail and fall. You will sink and stumble, but yet you have a choice. You do not have to fall into the pit. You can always choose a different way. What is our future but what we make of it, Marden says. And my favorite quote of this chapter, one's resolution is one's prophecy. Marden goes on to say that there is no hope for anyone who is not inspired by a purpose, and not just any purpose, but a stalwart purpose. Now, stalwart, per the Oxford Dictionary, means to be reliable, loyal, and hard-working. In a phrase, to be noble. A noble purpose. What better thing could there be to work towards? What better way to build self-respect? To cultivate our own timber for the construction of something meaningful in this structure that is life. What we are to be really, we are now, potentially, Marden says. As the future oak lies folded in the acorn, so in the present lies our future. We are filled with potential. In the acorns of our hearts is a future mighty oak. But the tree can only grow as strong as the quality of care it receives. Marden goes on to say that our success can be, but a natural tree developed from the seed of our own sowing. We are born with the seeds in our hearts, but how shall they grow into mighty oaks that will one day become the timber that builds the world for future generations? Well, through education and influence. As Marden comments, the first requisite of all education and discipline should be man-timber, and so through discipline, education, experience, the sapling child is developed into a hardy, mental, moral, physical timber. But what if an acorn is planted in soil filled with salt and poison? Can it still grow well? Well, that is why Marden mentions the importance of not just improving ourselves, but the world around us. To be mindful of the cracks and dings and scratches we leave on other people's marble, and to not underestimate what one gentle polish or sincere compliment can do to the whole work. We are called to transform, not just ourselves, but the world around us for the better. In cultivating our own trees, we ensure a richness for the saplings that come after us, allowing them to grow stronger and taller than ever we could. Marden asks, and is it not all this inspiration in response to a divine touch and a divine life? Well, God, the great transformer, Marden likens to a musician, who tunes our hearts to that of the sweetest, most divine melodies, in hopes that they may echo throughout the world. And from Marden's story of the girl of great character, who had in her locket, "Whom not having seen, I love." To look upon our fellow human beings, the greatest creation of the great Creator, to take this love and act upon it, building and helping despite the misuse of free will by the very people we seek to serve. This is strength. We, mankind, have been given amazing gifts, and those gifts mean that we can change. We can transform. In fact, we are called to transform, to embrace change even though it may give us what we need and not what we want. We are never alone, never stuck, never chained to our circumstances. When you feel all is lost, when you feel abandoned, hated, ridiculed, alone, when you feel you have nothing left, you always have something, your character, your marble core, your soul, a gift unique to you, given to you by the Creator of all Himself, and it is something that no one on this earth can take from you. To finish with a quote from a poem by Alice Carey, "True worth is in being, not seeming, in doing each day that goes by, some little good not in the dreaming, of great things to do by and by. For whatever men say in their blindness, and spite of the fancies of youth, there is nothing so kingly as kindness, and nothing so royal as truth." And with that, we have completed our reading of Character, the Grandest Thing in the World by Orison Swett Marden. We will be diving into this book just a little bit more with a Vesta Vox episode, and since we've done a discussion at the end of each chapter, we won't be going into it too deeply, but we'll be looking a little bit more into Orison Swett Marden himself, some of the other works that he has written, and some of the different, for lack of a better term, characters that he mentions in his book. He makes references to people who, at that point in time, would have been common household names, but I find myself not recognizing most of the other individuals that he mentions. But it has been a rather fascinating research project to look up these different people that he mentions and quotes, and I'm sort of excited to take that research and boil it down into a video to where we can sort of see where he got his inspiration and his own, quote, research for this book. And so without further ado, we were going to continue this channel by completing the playthrough of 1111 Memories Retold, doing a Vesta Vox episode on that, and then I am currently scouring my library for the next book. I have so many things I want to read and discuss, it can be quite difficult to boil everything down, but I will hopefully do so soon, so we can keep up this train of discussion, if you will. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, please leave a comment below. What do you think of Orison Swett Marden's book? What do you think of this chapter? I'm always very curious to foster respectful discussion and debate about topics, because it's very curious to see how other people interpret the same paragraphs and books that I read, because I have one very different point of view based off of my background, while others have very significantly different ones. So if you're interested, let me know what you thought, and thank you for sticking through to the end of this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Pax vobiscum. Goodbye.